force effort, I think Deputy Secretary Regas went through in great detail last week and the process that was conducted to make those determinations. There was consultation taken both at the at senior levels and at the workforce levels, where comments were provided from, and I think Deputy Secretary Regas mentioned the number 650, around 650 comments that were provided to State Department
Okay, well,
leadership.
So you have some rationale, so maybe we could see that rationale so we can explain to these people why they got fired. Were some expectant mothers in this group, some families that were just got the axe just overnight. How are they getting home, and how's their health insurance covering them for these babies that they're expecting to have that they weren't anticipating just being laid off suddenly? Did you take that into account?
Thank you, Congressman, for your follow-up question. As I said, and as Deputy Secretary Regas said, the determinations that were made on the closures of offices and the resulting reduction in force cuts that were made, that was to eliminate redundancies and to streamline processes in the State Department. It was not a personal matter. It was removal of redundant functions.
These women in any kind of soft landing?
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Representative Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman, and I thank you earlier for pushing back on the nonsensical idea that the Trump administration has somehow been soft on human trafficking, and rightly pointing out that the border is now closed and secure. We know the biggest human traffickers in the world were the cartels. They were making over $13 billion a year trafficking people across our southern border and flooding our country with people who were illegally here. They were massively exploited along the way, and potentially some of that exploitation is still going on, and I'm encouraged by the efforts at all levels to shut that down. So with that, Secretary Hooker, thank you so much for your testimony today and your service in our State Department. I'd like to thank you and Secretary Rubio for your hard work in reorganizing the State Department so that we could put America's interests first with America's resources. So thank you. The reorganization of the Political Affairs Bureau is an important reform, prioritizing regional experts with on-the-ground knowledge and relationships to lead State Department policy. It never made sense to allow anti-growth, climate change activists in the Environmental Bureau to run policy. I've heard from people around the world who felt like they're putting ideology ahead of interest between our country and other countries, as they wanted to have bilateral relations that were focused on real issues. We saw in whether it's environmental policy or social agendas like LGBTQ+, that the administration had a different agenda than just listening and building relationships. So let me turn to Greenland. I'm proud to be the founding chairman of the Congressional Greenland Caucus earlier this year. Arctic security is critical for our national security, and ensuring that we keep Russia and China in their place as we confront not just Arctic security, but Arctic opportunities. And I'm glad there were components of the big, beautiful bill that advance that. Could you elaborate on how the State Department's working to address that issue?
Thank you, Congressman, for your question and for your comments as well. You've hit on a number of issues that are of great importance to this administration, whether it's supply chain or our security in the Arctic. All of those issues can be found central in Greenland. And our engagement with Denmark continues. As you know, we have a base there in Greenland, which keeps us very tied to it. So I guess the best thing I can say about it is that we're paying close attention to this issue. Our Bureau of European Affairs has under its responsibility Greenland, and will continue to work this issue going forward for the administration.
Thank you so much, and I'd love to build an interface there with the State Department to specifically talk about Greenland issues, both with the people of Greenland and with folks of Denmark. And if we could arrange travel there just to build rapport and relationships, would have a congressional delegation that would love to participate with the State Department in strengthening our ties. As the chairman of National Security and Illicit Finance, every day we have malign foreign actors, and Representative Shreve highlighted, one of those issues where you're seeing transnational criminal organizations exploit our seniors. Thank you for highlighting the response there. Do you have any thoughts on how the financial services lane and using all the tools, whether it's OFAC or things that are in Treasury, could work with the State Department to provide additional leverage in your negotiations?
Thank you, Congressman. I think we have to keep all of our tools on the table, so to speak. We have to use all available tools in dealing with these issues. So as we go forward, if there is a need to work with you more closely on that, we're very much interested in doing so.
Thank you for that. And then lastly, I just talk about, Vice President Vance really spoke to, he's from my congressional district, and frankly, if my constituents could have been in Munich, Germany, they might have not said it as eloquently, but we're concerned, what exactly are we defending? When you look at people who are having to flee the United Kingdom, flee Germany, even Poland for asylum in Hungary, where they're defending civil liberties in Hungary. How are you working in the State Department to make sure that the values that we share that defined our alliances are actually still represented in our alliances?
Thank you, Congressman. I don't think I have to say that the United States considers freedom of expression to be foundational component of our functioning democracy. And so this can be part of our diplomatic engagement with these countries that you just mentioned, that we continue to stand for the very freedoms that we hold dear, and with our fellow democracies around the world, ensure that they continue to see this as a value and that we're emphasizing it.
Thank you so much. My time's expired, and I yield back.
Representative Castro.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Undersecretary, for your testimony and for being here today. What's happening in Gaza is a horror of mass starvation, mass murder, and even a plan for ethnic cleansing that Americans are helping to pay for. Every day brings us fresh horrors of starving children, in fact, some of them starving to the bone, civilians killed by snipers while they seek out food, and entire families wiped out by the IDF. And as I mentioned, and as you know, Americans are helping to pay for it. I wanted to ask you what the Trump administration's plan is to stop it. As we and the world witnesses these horrors, what is your plan to stop it?
Representative Castro, thank you for your question and for allowing me to respond. When we talk about Israel-Gaza, I think it's important to remember two specific things. First, this situation started on October 7th, when Hamas invaded Israel and killed nearly 1,200 Israelis, mostly civilians, in the most heinous and barbaric ways. Second, I think we should also emphasize that Hamas could end this conflict today. It could put down their arms, they could return the hostages.
But certainly you're not
Hamas
suggesting, hold on, I'm going to reclaim my time for a second. You're not suggesting that those 5- and 6-year-old kids have any control over what Hamas does, are you? In fact, those folks in Hamas, the people who make up Hamas, many of them are hidden away in tunnels or out of Gaza and are not the ones who are being subjected to these bombs and missiles and starvation and so forth.
What I was going to say, Congressman, was that we mourn the loss of any civilian life, whether that's Israeli, Palestinian, whomever. And that's why we're focused on achieving a ceasefire. It's the laser focus of President Trump and of this administration.
Well, Undersecretary, I guess I want to tell you, just for a second, I want to tell you when Anthony Blinken sat where you're sitting in December, I believe, I told him that I was disappointed with how the Biden administration approached this and that we didn't do enough during that time to stop these horrors. And I will say the same thing to you as part of the Trump administration, that our government is not doing enough. We have all on this dais called out Hamas for the horrors of October 7th. We have labeled them even before this as terrorists and penalized nations or anyone who has associated with them. But what actions have we taken against Benjamin Netanyahu's government for the horrors that they've committed? Where are the consequences for their action?
Thank you, Congressman. What I was going to say was that we're very focused on achieving a ceasefire and delivering humanitarian assistance. As you may be aware, and I think there was some press reporting overnight, that Special Envoy Witkoff is going to be leading the engagement. He's headed to the region right now to work to finalize the aid corridor and reach a ceasefire. You asked what we're doing. That's one of the things we're doing is Special Envoy Witkoff will be traveling to the region to work on this issue.
Let me raise another issue with you, because Israeli settlers in the West Bank attacked the Palestinian Christian village of Taibeh, setting fire to a cemetery and a 5th century church. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who's been a very strong supporter of Israel, called the attack, quote, an act of terror, and that they should be, quote, found and prosecuted, not just reprimanded, unquote. He similarly described the lynching of Palestinian American from Tampa, Florida, Saifola Musalet, by Israeli settlers in the West Bank as, quote, a criminal and terrorist act. That's 2 acts of terrorism within weeks by the same group of people, Israeli settlers in the West Bank. I want to ask you, will the United States be pursuing independent investigations into these terrorist attacks by Israeli settlers?
Thank you, Congressman. I understand that the IDF is investigating incidents. That
Will the
they're
United States
responsible-
government launch an investigation into these attacks?
And as I said, Special Envoy Witkoff is traveling to the region, and it's very much in President Trump's interest and his objective to reach stability in the region. He's working on ceasefires.
Will you guys
in each
commit to an independent United States investigation into these attacks?
Thank you for asking that question. I don't have an answer for you at this moment, but I've provided you with an answer to your question on what we've been doing on this issue and how we're working towards a ceasefire.
I yield back.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Representative Perry is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hooker, over here. Sorry about that. The State Department's 75,000 employees, including 13,000 Foreign Service officers and 11,000 civil service staff, cost taxpayers over $16 billion annually in salaries and benefits. Yet evidence suggests that many of the employees advocate socialist or communist ideologies that clash with American values, or certainly any oath that any of the employees might take. A 2024 whistleblower report from the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs revealed diplomats praising collectivist policies in meeting with EU counterparts, undermining our free market stance. Are we going to continue funding a diplomatic corps that seems more aligned with Marx than Madison? And I'm serious about that. Like, what is the plan here? Does the department even recognize this as an issue? And I'm not talking about restricting the exercise of free thought or free speech, but if we're going to have people in our State Department advocating for the policies and beliefs of our adversaries, I think that's problematic. So that's a serious question to you.
Thank you, Congressman, for your question. I'm just going to refer to the reorg for a moment, but
Okay.
it's in line with answering your question, and that is, as I've said, the reorganization is meant to bring the power over foreign policy back into the bureaus, but underneath senior bureau leadership that is aligned with this administration. And so under the leadership of not just myself, but the heads of those bureaus, and of course, Secretary Rubio, I'm confident that we'll be able to operate as a democracy and operate on these foreign policy objectives that the president has laid out.
And I appreciate that. And again, we're not asking for fealty to an individual, but I think many of us are frustrated over time with the State Department that seems to be antithetical to the values of the country and the citizens it supports. And you know, as an example here, the department's 2022 Equity Action Plan, costing $12 million last year, projected at $15 million for FY26, promotes DEI initiatives that prioritize identity over merit, mirroring socialist frameworks. A 2023 internal survey showed 62% of Foreign Service officers supported policies like wealth taxes or nationalized industries. Those ideas are just rejected by Americans. And Furthermore, let's see here. Here's a true story. In 2024, a whistleblower in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor revealed a clique of employees circulating a petition to soften sanctions on Cuba, citing humanitarian concerns while ignoring Havana's repression. The petition, signed by 22 staff members, was exposed by a Freedom of Information Act request. Again, we just prefer people that are loyal to the United States of America. I mean, Ana Montes is cooling her heels in a prison for being the most prolific operative working inside the United States of America, yet promoting Cuban communist policies. We simply can't have that. So I understand there's a reorganization going on, but if you can elucidate for us any of the policies in that reorganization that would kind of get a gauge on loyalty to the Constitution of the United States of America. For instance, do employees take an oath regarding their loyalty to the Constitution of the United States of America?
Each employee of the Department of State takes an oath when they begin their service to the Constitution. I did too, when I started
all right.
on June 5th.
And so,
it's the same oath.
and so if employees of the State Department then advocate for the Communist Party of Cuba, is that seen as a violation, or will that be seen moving forward as a violation of that oath?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I work every day with absolutely fabulous colleagues in the Department of State, Foreign Service, Civil Service, other staff in the department. And I appreciate your concerns, and thank you for highlighting each of those issues. I will work with my colleagues in the Management Bureau to see how we might be able to address this if it arises as a problem going
I appreciate
forward.
your time, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to close here before the chairman has to cut me off. We need a State Department that works in concert with the views of the Constitution of the United States of America and moves that agenda, the agenda of America, forward abroad. And we can't have employees, whether they're convicted of sedition or treason like Ana Montes was, or whether they're just expressing antithetical positions that help our enemies. We can't have them being the spokespersons and the policymakers for the United States of America, and there's got to be some repercussions for those kind of things in the Department of State. With that, I yield the balance.
Gentleman yields back. Representative Sherfless McCormick is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Undersecretary, for being here. Quite frequently, we hear our House Republicans talk about this policy of putting America first, America's interests first. But I'm failing to see real processes and thought-out procedures to implement to achieve this goal. So I'm hoping that today you'll give us some insight as far as to strategy and policies on how we can get there. And I'm hoping that these strategies and policies would actually have within it some mitigation procedures, any corrective actions, but really having the implementation by experts. Since we have so many people who are being fired, we want to make sure that experts are at that table. And so I can't wait for you to shed light on this, so these won't just be slogans of putting America's interests first, but we'll see tangible acquisition or actually getting to that. So I want to shift our attention to Haiti and find out what is the strategy with Haiti.
Thank you, Congressman, for your questions. With the empowerment of each of the regional bureaus, I'm just trying to edit what I've repeated and what you've heard me said about the reorganization. You've heard me say how it's empowered each of the regional bureaus and our embassies overseas. What that does is it allows each bureau and their area of
Well,
responsibility.
specifically, I wanted to hear about Haiti, because Haiti is a unique situation, especially in the region. And right now, the Office of Haitian Affairs is eliminated. So I wanted to hear what is the strategy behind eliminating it, especially since it's such a huge crisis for the entire Western Hemisphere, and there is a significant amount of guns which are coming from the United States into Haiti, and drugs that are going throughout the entire Caribbean. So it seems to me that eliminating the Office of Haitian Affairs would be contrary to the goal of actually containing and controlling this region. So what is the strategy behind eliminating it in this climate?
I apologize, Congresswoman, I misunderstood the end of your question. I apologize for that. The Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs is responsible for Haiti. So it's not that our focus on Haiti has changed. We're, assure you, very focused on Haiti.
Haiti had an Office of Haitian Affairs, specifically because of the uniqueness of what's going on in Haiti. Right now, Haiti is in crisis mode. And in this crisis mode, what we're finding is that you guys are eliminating the office. And the elimination of the office seems contrary to what is needed at this present moment. So could you please expand on what is the strategy for success in Haiti in its crisis situation, which is so close to South Florida, which is actually affecting the United States every single day? What is the strategy behind?
So the elimination of the Office of Haiti Affairs does not mean that the function of overseeing Haiti issues has been eliminated. The department, Secretary Rubio has assigned Ambassador Henry Wooster who is now Chargé d'Affaires in Haiti, to evaluate the situation in Haiti in a whole of government approach.
Okay, so
and so that's the strategy. I'm sorry,
so there
that's the
wasn't
strategy
a strategy in place before. It was just eliminate it and then think through it and create a strategy, because you're saying he's going to be analyzing it, but there was no current strategy before implementation.
He has analyzed it.
So what
He's
is
been
the
working on this
strategy?
issue for the past month. The strategy was to continue to work on Haiti affairs with the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, focused on Haiti, and Ambassador Wooster has been assigned to work in a whole of government approach on
So
the
with
issues
closing
in Haiti.
of the actual, of that office, will the personnel be shifting also? Will it have the same attention, same personnel, the experts?
It has the same attention for sure. The functions of the Office of Haiti Affairs have been absorbed into the full bureau, and these functions are continuing.
So why close that office and leave other offices, such as the office on Cuba? Why close this office and have it absorbed into Western Hemisphere? The Western Hemisphere, most of those countries aren't having the same issues, and that's why traditionally it has its own office. Why do that?
All of these functions are being covered. I can assure you of that. I mean, that's the purpose.
Well, thank you
there
so
were
much.
redundancies
My time is
have
running
been
out.
eliminated.
My time's running out, and I thank you so much for being here today, but I'm afraid that I hear a lot about making America's priorities first, but as I said, it's looking more and more like a slogan, because we're not seeing real policies, real strategy, real implementation. We're seeing these haphazard ideas of closing the Haitian Affairs Office when right now we so desperately need the attention for that office. I'm not hearing about the personnel, the experts who will be continuing the work that is done in Haiti. I'm hearing more about, well, we just closed or eliminated the office, and now we're going to analyze to make sure we have everything going forward. That forethought should have been there in the beginning, so we can guarantee that we won't see any kind of issues. But what we've been seeing consistently have been issue after issue, lack of forethought, lack of experts, lack of mitigation processes when they do find an issue, and also lack of corrective actions. So going forward, I would love to be able to work with the administration so we can put these procedures in place so we can actually attain that reality of having policies that strengthen the United States while edifying our allies. Thank you, and I yield back.
I don't think you had much time to yield back, but thank you for relinquishing the microphone. I'm now going to recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. In my opening remarks, I used the term outcome a couple times. And I think that's one of the most important things to recognize about what's been lacking with the State Department and what needs to be the focus of the State Department. State Department is not a think tank. It's also not the Department of Defense. We don't have people in uniforms in the same way. But it is lacking some of the important things that the Department of Defense has. As I mentioned, a very clear hierarchy, a very clear structure that people follow in the same way. That has been lacking in the State Department. And I believe the measurable outcomes, again, have been lacking in the same way. I want to start by giving you a chance, in part, to respond to a few things, because there's been accusations made about somehow there's a lack of outcomes because of the actions taken by the Trump administration. And so my colleague said, the State Department was not properly resourced. Now, I know you were in the State Department previously in your career as well. The budget's grown by about $45 billion over the last 25 years. So when we're talking about outcomes, has the State Department been $45 billion more effective over that time?
I don't believe so, sir.
I think that's a plain way to put it. I don't believe so either. And I think objectively, I'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that could say that it has been. The State Department, it added between 2007 and 2024, 23,000 additional jobs in that window of time. You have almost 80,000 employees, and you have accusations being leveled against you that you just don't have the resources that you need. You don't have the people in place. And how on God's green earth could you get rid of 1,500 employees in this place? Well, again, we have to look at the outcomes of what was taking place. We are not a jobs program. The State Department is not. It has to be measured in outcomes. And so given that you have almost 80,000 employees, are you properly resourced, or are you lacking? Do you need to be at 90,000?
Thank you, Congressman. I would like to just respond by saying, as you alluded to in your opening statement, that reorganization has been necessary for a long time. And as I said, multiple administrations have tried and failed to do that. The Trump administration, under President Trump's leadership, under Secretary Rubio, has taken a very bold step to eliminate the redundant offices, to eliminate the redundant roles that were being played out under the previous structure, and with, as you said, an amount of employees and with the budget that could be streamlined. And so definitely the Secretary has taken steps to do that. And not just to do that, but to make sure that our foreign policy is being implemented in a way that's streamlined, that's expedient, that meets the needs, not just of our diplomatic partners, more importantly, that it's in line with our American interests, our national security interests, our economic security interests, and to ensure that the future is safer and more prosperous and more secure.
I thank you for those respective outcomes that you're seeking. Those are all worthy outcomes that I believe in. I wouldn't say that seeking a set number of employees is a worthy outcome. That's not a metric that I think the State Department should care about, whether it has 80,000 or whether it has 78,500. Doesn't matter. What matters are the outcomes that are achieved, and the fact of the matter is, under the Biden administration, it wasn't one or two incidents, as one of my colleagues put it, of, well, there might have been some drag shows in Ecuador, there might have been some expanded atheism in Nepal, or there might have been some little bit of transgender here. It was systemic across every continent, every country, prioritized to use the State Department for social experimentation and virtue signaling instead of measurable outcomes that made America the partner of choice, real diplomacy. And I applaud the work that's going on in the State Department to return it to what it needs to do, which is make sure that the policies being put in place are putting the United States of America first. And I'll just close my questioning by saying, I believe you put the United States of America first with the State Department by always asking the questions. What does America need from a country or region? What does that country or region want from the United States of America? And if we choose to provide something, whether it's PEPFAR or anything else, or an aid program, or, God forbid, a transgender job fair or something else stupid like that, does it get the United States of America what it needs? Because if it doesn't, then somehow we were talking past one another. We didn't have the right conversation. And I want to ensure that you have the right conversations to get this country what it needs. I guess I'm yielding my time. I don't have any more time left. I don't know that I can yield it back to myself. I don't know that that's a real thing. But I'm going to now recognize Representative Stanton nonetheless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In the diplomatic arena, we are ceding ground to China. This administration is cutting staff, haphazardly restructuring the State Department without congressional input, and proposing steep funding cuts. These are policy choices that create a vacuum of power, and China is taking notice. I'm open to having a real conversation about necessary changes to our foreign policy apparatus. But we cannot say that we are serious about competing with China when our restructuring means cutting 1,300 employees and rescinding almost $9 billion in spending on foreign affairs, while China has proposed an 8.4% increase in their diplomatic budget. Closing the office that has coordinated the diplomatic response to China's aggression in the South China Sea, and closing the Office of Security and Transnational Affairs in the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, which had specific expertise in countering China's assertiveness in the region. Undersecretary Hooker, is it true that the East Asia Pacific Bureau's Multilateral Affairs Office was scrapped in the reorganization?
That office has been eliminated, and its functions have been integrated into the rest of the offices in the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs.
Is it true that the entire team that had prepped Secretary Rubio for his meetings in Malaysia as part of the Association of South Asian Nations were fired while the Secretary was in meetings that they had planned?
As I mentioned, that office was eliminated, and the staff that were staffing that office were also eliminated. I would also like to point out that the efforts to move forward with the reorganization began on May 29th when Secretary Rubio notified Congress, and of course were held up for months by the court cases.
Is there anyone in Washington, D.C. at the State Department in charge of leading engagement with ASEAN, the Pacific Island Forum, the Asia Summit, or the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation?
Yes, sir. There are staff and officers in the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs that are responsible for each of those engagements.
Undersecretary Hooker, Secretary Rubio has consistently said that China is the geopolitical challenge we face. It is the greatest geopolitical challenge that we face, and we need people in the department that can face directly that threat. That requires Mandarin language skills and an understanding of Chinese culture. To follow up on my colleague's earlier questions about laying off Mandarin speakers, of the Mandarin speakers who were RIFed, how many received language training funded by the Department of State?
Sir, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can assure you, as I would Representative J. Paul if she were still here, that we do continue to have Mandarin speakers. Some of them are on my staff and are sitting behind me.
What was the average cost per person of the department's investment in Mandarin language training for those staff?
I am happy to look into those figures for you. That is something that I do not have under my purview, but I can work with you to get those numbers back to you from the Bureau of Management.
How long on average does it take to replace a Mandarin-speaking Chinese specialized staff member from recruitment to deployment?
Thank you for your question, sir. I'm happy to look into that. I know, as I said, we still have Mandarin capability in the department and out in the field, and I don't know how long each of those individuals have spent learning the language.
What % of the department's total Mandarin language capacity was lost in this RIF?
So thank you for your questions. Happy to look into all of the answers to these questions, but I do want to underscore that the functions of the offices that have been eliminated continue. I also want to underscore the expertise that we maintain in the department. 1,300, not quite that number, almost 1,300 talented individuals who served their country very well, and we appreciate their service, were affected by the reduction in force. It doesn't mean that we don't respect them for that, but we have been engaged in this reform in order to make our foreign policy more effective, more nimble. Thank you, sir.
Undersecretary Hooker, your answers have not convinced me that this administration fully grasps or even has a plan to mitigate the damage it has done with its haphazard reorganization to one of the most useful language skills we absolutely need in our diplomatic corps. We are facing a critical moment right now with the Chinese challenge to the United States. We cannot afford to give up ownership in this critical arena. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We've reached the end of our question period for this time. I would like to yield to the gentleman for any closing statement that the minority may have.
I'd like to make a statement on behalf of the ranking member Meeks. Secretary Hooker, you served our nation as a national security professional for more than 20 years. Your expertise on the Korean Peninsula, nonproliferation, and the Indo-Pacific has helped advance American interests on the global stage. Your public service is appreciated. So I know that you recognize the value of our career civil and foreign service officers and the unique expertise that they bring to the job every single day. I know that you know and you recognize that the personnel in the State Department's Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs and those working on nuclear issues are essential to achieving our most urgent national security goals, which is why I also know that you understand just how much harder your job has become after Secretary Rubio fired almost 1,300 national security experts from the State Department. Unfortunately, the Trump administration's dismantling of the State Department is a far cry from the, quote, modern diplomatic corps that is ready to meet the challenges of a complex world, unquote, that you spoke of in April. The fact of the matter is that the State Department is now unquestionably less prepared to meet those challenges and succeed, given the massive cuts, reduction in force, and reorganization, and frankly, lost talent. Americans' national security is compromised by these short-sighted, self-inflicted wounds, and we have heard nothing from you today to ease those critical concerns. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. For my closing statement, I'll simply recognize you to answer any questions that you felt as though you didn't have the opportunity to answer or make any statements that you used to make in closing.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before this body and to have the opportunity to tell a good news story, actually. And first of all, I'd like to just reject the premise that the reorganization that Secretary Rubio has undertaken, an historic reorganization that he has undertaken at the Department of State, was haphazard. It was not haphazard. It was methodical. It was considered. It was conducted by engaging senior leadership at the undersecretary level that is both career and political. It was conducted by engaging the workforce, in which we've talked about here today that more than 650 comments went into the consideration. It was conducted to streamline redundancies and meet the needs of our foreign policy going forward, to eliminate some of the waste, some of the inefficiencies that you've actually also mentioned and your colleagues have mentioned here today. And we're on the way to doing that. The Secretary has taken great strides by eliminating these offices. As I mentioned, these reorganization steps were taken in a way where they're not personal, were not individual. They were aimed at streamlining functions, streamlining our efforts to make sure that both the President's priorities and the interests of the American people are being met in the most efficient way possible. I also want to answer the assertion that we have now a lack of expertise at the State Department. There are still thousands of experts who also speak Mandarin at the department and who are working every day to, with great pride, working every day to implement the foreign policy of this great nation. And so some of your colleagues have just mentioned with the elimination of certain offices that expertise was just lost forever. No, there are other experts that are working on these issues. These functions have been integrated. As I said, I commit to working with this body to answer some of the questions that you've raised today that maybe I didn't have the answers in front of me, but it'd be my great honor to do that, as it is my great honor to return to the State Department in this role to serve President Trump and to serve Secretary Rubio. And with that, sir, I'd just like to say thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony today. Thank you for your comments. I think saying not haphazard is a perfect way to place this. I spent a lot of time kicking in doors, kicking in doors. It was rapid, it was violent, there were risks, but it was necessary. But being all of those things, it was the farthest thing from haphazard. It was something that needed to take place, and there were some real doors that needed to be kicked in at the State Department, and I thank Secretary Rubio for everything he's undertaken to do that, and I thank you for your lane as that as well. Pursuant to committee rules, all, maybe one more, hold on, got to find the right page. All right, I thank you for your valuable testimony today. I thank all members for their questions. Members of this committee may have some additional questions for you, Undersecretary, and they will ask you to respond to those in writing. Pursuant to committee rules, all members may have 5 days to submit those statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to length limitations, and without objection, this committee stands adjourned.